1894, in 1984, UNK moved the contra dances from St. John's to the Olympia Ballroom above the Urban Onion, and the dances happened there until the end of 1987. So just describe what those dances were like for us.
Upstairs.
Upstairs, really, it was a fine floor. That's where all the big bands used to stop back in the 40s. Glenn Miller and all the big bands would travel by train, and they would stop in Olympia and play at the ballroom. It was called the Starlight Room, wasn't it? Okay, Starlight Room. It had one of those big mirror globes hanging from the ceiling that would rotate.
Are you serious?
Was there anyone here that went to dances then?
That was my first dance.
I knew I'd been.
For the waltzes, you'd turn the lights down and have this rotating mirror ball. It was very romantic. Sort of, yeah. In actuality, Jim Rimshaw decided to go to graduate school at the U, and so he called us over to his house one day, and he said, "Well, I'm going to move to Seattle, so the dance is in your hands." And plop, he put down this very thin folder of materials and said, "Here's all the records for the dance so far." And then he said, "Good luck," and he moved away. So that's how it sort of ended up in our hands. So what was the question?
Oh, something else. Next, so that went through 3 years at the ballroom. Then you moved it to the South Bay Grange. How did that happen?
Well, the reason for that is that we had a very good deal at the ballroom. If we had 50 people, we paid $50 for the hall. If we had 20 people, we paid $20. So it was really hard to lose. If we charged $2, we could make a profit of some kind. Well, it was also used to teach ballroom dancing, and during one of those events, not during our event, a woman slipped and fell and put her hand on and sprained her wrist, and this being the land of opportunity, she looked around for someone to sue. So she sued the ballroom, and they settled out of court, but the cost of renting the ballroom went sky high, and we couldn't afford it anymore, which is sort of what's happened all through Seattle. I understand that there's no dances on weekends because all the halls are too expensive. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll run through some things that, and Don will grab the mic whenever he has a story erupt as part of this. So the South Bay Grange, everyone's obviously familiar with because that's still going on, and it spawned two other dances there, the Geezers and Riff Raff. So there's all sorts of opportunities to dance there. But there have been other dances, either regular or ephemeral, that have come and gone over the years. In the 1990s, UNK and others organized occasional dances at the Prosperity Grange out at Steamboat Island Road. They had wonderful potluck dinners and usually an unmiked, open to everybody band named
the Prosperity Volunteers.
The Prosperity Volunteers.
Where is that?
Oh, it's right at the base of the Steamboat Island Road. Near the next to the fire station.
Actually, some memorable events took place at the Prosperity Grange. We mentioned earlier that Jim and Kathy had their what is it, 78th anniversary out there. I forgot which it was. And so since it was their celebration, I made the profound mistake of doing a grand march and putting them in charge of the grand march at the beginning of the line. And I said, okay, everyone in the line, just do whatever Jim and Kathy does. And so they marched around, and they marched right out the door. And every dancer in the place walked out of the doors. And I didn't know if they were ever coming back. The band looked at me, I looked at them, I said, well, we may as well keep playing. But they eventually did come back. And Jim says he takes full credit for that. Did you have something to do with that?
Oh, I think so.
Another memorable thing, of course, was what I already mentioned, Eric and Carol's wedding celebration out there at the Prosperity Grange. And then an event that I thought that Michael Carey had orchestrated, and I found out that in talking with David that he was the instigator. there's something called doing an alligator to a caller, and that's when you teach the dance and everyone does the walkthrough, and then as you start to call it, everyone falls on their back like Phil is doing.
That's the Chicago Gator.
And everyone, for some unexplained reason, lies on their back and waggles their feet in the air. So most of the time it's not 100% alligator, but this was spectacular. Every person on the floor dropped on their back and did it. And I always thought that Michael Carey had done that, but David tells me that he was the instigator.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And
Really sorry you can.
yeah,
He's in good company. Ted Sedella, I happen to know, once got gatored out at Lady of the Lake camp.
it's very funny to, if you're the caller, to observe this going on all at once. And then there was the, I guess you have something about at that Grange, the piano was stage left, and I set up the caller's mic and the sound system on stage right. And Michael Carey always wanted to be stage right, and I thought, well, he just prefers that. So at the break one of those dances, someone came up to me and said, you know, all I can hear is the mandolin. I said, really? How? Mandolin? So I went up and I looked at the board, and what Michael was doing behind my back was reaching across and turning up the mandolin channel, and that's why only he could hear the mandolin out there. So that's why he wanted to sit stage right. So you got to be careful with mandolin players.
Yeah.